Greetings, family, greetings. Welcome to Reverend J's Self-Care Station. I'm your guide and self-care specialist, Reverend Jaquetta. If you're interested in taking your health into your own hands, my work is to give you some how-tos of caring for yourself in order to be present, balanced, and healthy for all the work and play you have to do. I do that by helping us look at the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, cultural, financial, and social aspects of being in order to truly be whole, balanced, and healthy. So join us as we dig deep into self-care at Reverend J's Self-Care Station. Today I want to talk about stress. Stress is defined as a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances. I've heard for years that there's good and bad stress. Well, I disagree. I don't believe there's any such thing as good stress. And I know there are professionals who are probably looking at this saying, oh, but there is. No, I just disagree with you. Where they say we have to have stress to force us to move forward. Well, I think there is the stress that's necessary sometimes to move us forward when we're in a situation that we wouldn't normally be in. Say if you have a paper that's due tomorrow and you haven't planned the time properly, so you have to do that paper. There's a stress of moving you forward to get that done, but that is a stressor that's going to force you to do something good, but the stress itself isn't necessarily good stress. I just don't believe there's good stress. I just don't believe in it, I tell you. So I think they're confusing personal stress with the stress necessary to move objects. Like there's a certain level of stress in torque that makes an airplane rise and fly. If you use a lever to move a boulder, there's stress that makes the boulder move. But for myself, I'm not a rock. So I just don't want to be stressed. I just don't believe stress. I just don't want it. I don't want it, I tell you. So while stress does serve a purpose, it's meant to be temporary. Just like fear. If you're faced with something, say there's a bear in your yard, you're supposed to be gripped with fear to get you to move out of the way. But that fear is supposed to be temporary to get you to move. Every time you go out in your yard, you're not supposed to be afraid because you had that one situation that was fearful. And stress is the same way. Now, some of us live on the cortisol released by stress, but that can jeopardize your health. And it can show up in your body as aches and pains, chest pain or racing heart, exhaustion or trouble sleeping, headaches, dizziness or shaking, high blood pressure, muscle tension, jaw clenching, digestive problems, sexual malfunction, memory deficiency, and a number of other ways. So we don't want to just live in a place of stress. Now, sometimes we cope with stress unhealthily. If you find yourself participating in any of these activities when it's not really your norm, you may be stressed. If you're overeating, undereating, getting uncharacteristically angry, getting uncharacteristically sad, not feeling like moving around, withdrawing from social activities, reducing personal hygiene, using poor judgment, increasing alcohol or drug intake. And one of the things that I do when I'm stressed is I just kind of tune out and I want to just go watch TV. Just let me do something mindless for a while because stress is too much. So if you find those things happening, you just may be stressed. Now, to prevent being overtaken by stress, I've learned to compartmentalize. Now, I've meditated for a number of years, and in meditation, we learn to be in the present moment. So we're not thinking about all the stuff that happened yesterday. Ooh, this should have happened. Oh, that could have happened. Well, dang, that would have happened if that had happened. We go back over and over situations, or we think about the future, what may go wrong, what could happen. We haven't been there yet. We don't know what's going to happen. So the point is to stay in the present moment and prepare for what we want to have happen instead of fretting about what's in the future. So I put situations in their compartments in my head, and they pretty much stay there until I summon them. And that's from years of practice. And that's not to say they never spill over, but as a practice, they stay where I put them. But what made me think to talk about stress was that I had a situation not long ago where my thoughts didn't stay where I told them to stay. I was trying to go to sleep one night, and they all just rushed into my head, and they were just having this party that I didn't ordain. I didn't commission this party. I didn't say this party was okay. They were just being unruly. I tried to put the walls back up. The walls wouldn't go back up. I tried to put them back in places and, some kind of structure in there. They would not pay attention to me. They were too slippery to grab, and I just couldn't put them back. And I started feeling my heart fluttering. My chest started getting tight, and I started thinking, I wonder if this is what a heart attack feels like. I was thinking, that's craziness. I can't have a heart attack, and I'm thinking those must be somebody's famous last words. I can't have a heart attack. It must be anxiety. Or I can't have a heart attack. It must be gas. What must people be thinking before this happens? So I remember learning years ago that the typical symptoms that take place during a heart attack are when you feel the pain or shooting down the left arm or down the left leg, or it may be on the side of the face. You might get numbness or tightening in the chest. Those are the typical symptoms they tell you about when they talk about heart attack. Well, they've broadened those now, because what happened originally is that when they started doing studies, they did them on white males. And if you think back to, we have to study our history and go back to history, but women were not considered part of the population. When they counted the population, they weren't counting women. Women had to fight for suffrage. Women had to fight for the right to vote. So we didn't really count. So they weren't doing studies on women to see how they were impacted. And if we just looked at studies, we'd have thought women weren't actually having heart attacks, because they only studied men. So they studied those symptoms that they gave when they went to the doctor, and these were the more prominent symptoms. Well, when they started actually studying white women, then they started noticing they were describing more subtle symptoms, like, of course, they still had the chest tightening, they had the pain in the chest sometimes. Sometimes they didn't have the pain in the chest. Sometimes they would have nausea. They might have broken into a sweat. And then when they started talking to men, men said they had those symptoms too, but they didn't really consider them. They only thought about the ones that really got their attention. So I was laying here thinking about these symptoms, and I'm thinking, I've had to really analyze my body, see what was going on. And there was the chest discomfort, but it wasn't, it was just, my heart was, it was a different kind of thing that I've never felt before. That's what made me start thinking about a heart attack in the first place. There was no shortness of breath, and that's one of the symptoms. There was no sweating, which is also one of the symptoms. You might break out into a sweat. And uh, what else? Indigestion sometimes is one of the symptoms, and sometimes the flu symptoms, like you might develop a chill. None of those were present. So I decided to do an exercise to calm myself down because I don't know what was happening with all these thoughts. But I want to caution us that when you feel those symptoms, if you feel like you may be having a heart attack, do not hesitate. Please call 911. Let them be the ones to say, okay, did you eat something before you go to bed? Were you thinking about things that cause you anxiety? Let them be the one to run down their list and ask you these questions. Do an examination to make sure you're okay, rather than having somebody find you on the floor where you've actually had a heart attack. Just err on the side of caution. Call 911. Let them examine you. But what I decided to do was to go through a breathing exercise, and we'll do this breathing exercise before we end today. But that's only because I'm so much aware of how my body functions. Now, some of us are very aware, but again, I say err on the side of caution. Now, some stress not only can bring about a heart attack, I mean, that is one of the symptoms of stress, but it can also be a factor in asthma, cancer, decreased immunity, depression and anxiety, diabetes, gastrointestinal problems, heart disease, obesity, regular headaches, and migraines. So to avoid the unnecessary stress, we can do deep breathing as a practice. So I'll give us that exercise right now. And if you're used to meditating, you can get into a meditative position. But if you're not used to meditating, sit in a chair with a straight back, or if you can't, if like my chair just naturally kind of leans back, so I could get a pillow and put it behind me so that I sit up straight. And the reason you want to sit up straight is because you want your breathing canal to be perfectly clear. Well, as perfectly clear as you can get it. Because if you notice, when somebody does CPR, if a person is balled up, they'll lay them flat so that their breathing canal is open. So you want to sit so that you're sitting up straight. Put your feet flat on the floor so that your feet are grounded. And you want your from your hips to your knees to be parallel with the floor, and your knee to your ankles to be perpendicular, straight, just straight to the floor. And when you're sitting up straight and you're comfortable, try to make sure you're comfortable, especially just for the practice. Now, if you're out in a stressful situation and you need to go into breathing, you may not be able to do all of these things. But for your practice, make sure you're in a position so that your breathing pathway is clear. Put your hands on your laps with your hands down, because you're releasing. When you release, you want your hands to be downward. If you're receiving, you want them upward, but we're releasing, so hands down, and relax. And in general, our inhale takes about half the length of time as our exhale. So we'll breathe, we'll inhale to the count of 4, exhale to the count of 8. And if I'll do the counting for us, but when you're counting for yourself, you can do that in your head, of course, so that it doesn't interfere with your breathing. Now, when I do the count, it's going to sound like I'm counting fast, but we breathe a lot faster than we think we do. So I just want to make sure you have enough time to do the breathing. So I'm going to count fast. It seems fast. I'll be counting about like 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's about the time of a normal inhale. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about the time of an exhale. And as you practice, it'll start to increase. Close your eyes to help you focus on your breath, and we'll breathe in and out 5 times for practice. And if you're in position, let's begin. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last time, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How do you feel? I'm hoping you feel more relaxed. So when you can also exercise to alleviate stress. But this breathing exercise helps you relax on a regular basis. Practice it every day. Practice it so that when the situation arises, you're not going to YouTube. What can I do? What was that breathing? What did Reverend kind of say? If you practice it on a consistent basis, you'll already have it when you need it. So you don't want to have to look it up in order to do it when you need it. Exercise also helps to alleviate stress, especially the exercises that help you stretch. Because when you're stressed, you tend to constrict. But the more you can open up, the more you can stretch your body out, then you help to alleviate the stress. Yoga is a good exercise to do. Personal fitness, stretching, Tai Chi, where you're doing a lot of movement, removing your arms and opening up, is a good exercise to do. Dance, where you're stretching a lot, is also good. I do West African dance, and all of those can be used to alleviate stress because they help you stretch out and expand rather than drawing in and contracting the way stress makes us do. So to remember to practice regularly, and I'm hoping you found this information helpful today. If you did, put it in the chat. Tell me what in the comments what part of this information you found most helpful. If you have any questions, please ask me. I'm sorry, I had to check and see if there was anything I'm missing as we go live. But if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. As I said, like this video, share this video, especially if you know people who get into a lot of stressful situations. And just coming out of COVID, we're much more stressed than we were before. So please like and share and subscribe to our station. And as we close, remember, this is the place where we look at holistic health to include the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, cultural, financial, and social, because all of those impact our health. If you'd like to be added to our mailing list, because we also have a newsletter that goes along with the video, please go to info@thewholeselfministries.com, and we also provide an experience of the 5 pillars at Healing House. So you can get more information about that at our website at www.thewholeselfministries.com, and that link is below. So I want to thank you for joining me today. Until we meet again, I invite you to be peaceful, productive, and empowered. Shemhotep, which means go in peace.